Okay. All right. The American people had spoken. Roosevelt had won by the biggest electoral college landslide in history. The problem, people had to wait for him to take office. Like Lincoln and all president, or I should like Hoover and all presidents before him, he wouldn't take office until March 4th, 5 months after he was elected. The lengthy time period made sense in earlier years when the ballots took longer to count, but now, not now. Hoover was now officially a lame duck, a president whose authority is weakened because they are about to leave office. The lame duck amendment was passed, moving the inauguration up to January 20th. All right, restoring hope. Um, in his inaugural address, he says that his fear that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. The first test of the new administration's approach to crisis came from a second bonus march. This time, the White House provided campsites for the veterans, and Eleanor Roosevelt paid them a visit. When she walked up to a group of marchers, she said, "They looked at me curiously, and one of them asked my name and what I wanted." By the time she left, the veterans were waving and calling out goodbye and good luck to you. Fireside chats. The first Sunday after taking office, Roosevelt would speak to the nation over the radio, and the first of what would become regular fireside chats. His easy manner and confidence helped renew people's hopes for the future. The first 100 days is FDR's first step to restore public confidence in the nation's banks and as well as other policies, creating jobs and whatnot. Um, on March 5th, 1933, he ordered all banks to close for the next 4 days, then pushed Congress to pass the Emergency Banking Act. The act authorized the government to inspect the financial health of all banks. The goal here was to ensure Americans that their banks would not fail, and most were healthy. Two-thirds of the banks were allowed to reopen by March 15th. When they opened, people began to put more money back into their accounts than they took out. These deposits allowed banks to make loans that would help stimulate the economy. Later, Congress would pass the Glass-Steagall Banking Act of 1933 that insured deposits up to $5,000. We also had the Securities Exchange Commission, which regulated stock market and regulated on-margin loans. All right, FDR's next step was to help overburden local relief agencies. He persuaded Congress to establish a Federal Emergency Relief Administration, or FERA. This set funds, which sent funds to these agencies. Harry Hopkins was a Roosevelt advisor who directed the agency. He believed that helping people find work was the strongest thing that could be done. He said that if you give a man a dole, which is a handout, and you save his body and destroy his spirit. Give him a job and pay him an assured wage, and you save both the body and the spirit. CWA, all right, the fair also put works into public works programs like the Civil Works Administration. The CWA is going to put unemployed people to work building and improving roads, parks, airports, and other facilities. This became a huge morale booster to 4 million employees. A former salesman from Alabama said that when I got that CWA card, it was the biggest day of my life. At last I could say, I've got a job. The CCC became FDR's favorite program. It was established in March of 33 and put more than 2.5 million young, unmarried men to work maintaining forests, beaches, and parks. The CCC workers earned only $30 a month, and $25 was sent home and $5 was given to them. They lived in camps free of charge and received food, medical care, health care, and job training. Regulating the economy, Public Works Administration, or the PWA. It launched large-scale public work programs that Americans still benefit from today, like the causeway that connects Key West to the Florida mainland. And then here's a shot of the Florida Keys. Okay, here's a map, the causeway, and then here's a shot of the Florida Keys. We have the AAA. Many farmers were losing their homes and their land because of low prices they received for their products. The Agricultural Adjustment Administration tried to raise farm prices through subsidies or government financial assistance. The AAA used money from a new tax to pay farmers not to raise certain crops and livestock. Lower production, it was hoped it would cause prices to rise. Under this program, some farmers plowed under crops they were already growing. Many Americans couldn't understand how the federal government could encourage the destruction of food while so many people were hungry. And this was a failure. The Tennessee Valley Authority was created in 1933 to help farmers and create jobs. It activated hydroelectric power and provided cheap electric power and flood control. It became controversial because it was owned by the federal government, who then sold electric power to smaller private entities. So here's a map of the TVA. Alright, the Second New Deal. Most of the public remained behind Roosevelt. The midterm elections in 1934 showed overwhelming support for FDR. In 1935, Roosevelt launched a new, even more aggressive agenda. Historians call this the Second New Deal or Second 100 Days. Many critics were saying he didn't go far enough the first time. The second 100 days would include more social welfare benefits, stricter controls over business, stronger support for unions, and higher taxes on the rich. Labor unions had, like the NIRA, the National Industrial Recovery Act, provision granting them the right to organize and bargain collectively. When the NIRA was declared unconstitutional, workers began to demand new legislation to protect their rights. In July of 1935, Congress responded with the National Labor Relations Act, also called the Wagner Act, after its leading advocate, New York Senator Robert Wagner. It was called the Magna Carta of Labor. The Wagner Act legalized union practices such as collective bargaining and closed shops, which are workplaces open only to union members. It also outlawed spying on union activities and blacklisting. This also went to the Supreme Court, but it was upheld by NLRB versus Jones and Wallen. The WPA, or Works Progress Administration, set up in 1935 and lasted 8 years, built or improved tens of thousands of playgrounds, schools, hospitals, and airfields, and supported the creative work of many artists and writers, which is probably their greatest legacy in dealing with all this. Alright, Social Security. In 1935, Congress also passed the Social Security Act. The Act established the Social Security system to provide financial security in the form of regular payments to people who could not support themselves. It offered 3 types of insurance. Workers and employers pay equally into a national insurance fund. Retired workers or their surviving spouses were eligible at age 65. Second, employers with more than 8 employees fund this by paying a tax. The government would distribute the money to those who lost their jobs. And third, the federal government gave grants to states to help support these individuals. Today, Social Security provides regular income to retired and disabled workers and the unemployed. Social Security is founded by a compulsory payroll tax called the Federal Income Contributions Act, or FICA tax. The payroll tax is withheld from each paycheck. Withholding means that an employer deducts or holds back a set amount of money and then it sends it to the government. Okay, that is going to be the end of part 1.